Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Although I've been tempted to be offline in so many occasions, especially in the last 2-3 years, with all the veracity of issues that we need to attend to, and the sometimes diversity of opinion that, at least to be said, wild diversity of, I don't say wide, I say wild diversity of opinion that are in existence today, pertinent to so many different issues. This energy in itself has been challenged over the last 3-4 years, and what a diversity of challenges. I keep reminding people that at least in my case, as I became a minister, the first 6 days of being a minister, I had to deal with the biggest energy crisis I think had taken place ever. I would argue even much more serious in a way than what we went during 1990, when we lost half of our production capacity in 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Then we moved to COVID, where we lost, the jury are still out, but there are those who would say 25%, and there are those who would say 30% of consumption. And the consequences of that. Then in 22, we had another type of crisis, which relates to a war that had its own acrimonious uncertainties, sufficient to allow some people to claim that they have a better knowledge of what the consequences, and upon which major policy decisions were made, which would have been unnecessary if people were calmer and astute on how they conduct themselves. Because in my experience, be it personal crisis or political or global crisis, getting grip of yourself and thinking and pausing and thinking actually is a good way to bring about an earlier solution to this situation. But panicking as a result of a situation that you do still not know what is, and you keep wondering about the consequences of it, panicking is certainly not the right remedy for it. And you have seen how consequentially these things had evolved. Now we're still in the midst of another type of, well, a compounding uncertainty with regard to how we see the world economy and where its areas of strength that it may bring us back to a state of normalcy, higher interest rate, and the hubila that goes with it, including what is happening in terms of growth and GDP growth in Europe, the US, China, and the rest. So, along with the remnants of the leftovers or the existing now political and regional issues that have not stopped coming. In fact, now we're dealing with another issue that relates to the Red Sea and the consequences of that on trade, on oil, on gas, on everything. So, to sum it up, the last 4 years, I would have, as an energy minister, I would have preferred to be an energy minister not in the last 4 years, but in the last 20 years. Before these 4 years, it would have been a better time to attend to energy situation. Be it as it may, I think we are all invited to go back to the roots of this gathering. And I'm sure I want to take your burden to take good sizable time, not only in this issue, but on the very more serious issue, which is the future. I keep telling people, no matter what situation we're confronting today, we owe it not to ourselves, but we owe it to their generations, coming generation, that we should also maintain our sight and vigilance to what we need to do now to ensure that we have a better future for the generations to come. We should not lose sight of that, and we should continue working to achieve that. Be it as it may, I just want to remind people, our friends here, of why we are here, what it took to put this gathering together, and how much it is needed. If not needed, it will be even more emphasized that the need for it is paramount. I come from an old school. I was conceived to be I would, in the 80s, when I joined the oil ministry, I was conceived to be a seriously utopian, and that I could bring together OPEC and the IEA to start talking to each other. And indeed, I have still, luckily, there are people that were witness to the first attempts, upon which, again, well, we have two here. One of them is Dr. Majd al-Munif, and I guess Salman al-Harbish is down there, and Dr. Muhanna. But we went as such that I had the first meeting with an IEA officer, whose name is Quincy Lumsden, I think. He was a British, US officer, in a small alley somewhere in Paris. You know, it really gave me a suspense at that day, because I felt, you know, that we are engaged in a kind of a CIA, KGB type of espionage activity, you know, basement type of thing. Then he invited me at his apartment in Avenue Victor Hugo. It was a rented building in Paris, and we kept the relationship. And then at the AP week, the administrator of the IEA at that time, she was a German lady. Her name is Helga Stiger, if my memory helps me. And we were standing on a reception talking to everybody. Of course, I don't talk to her, she doesn't talk to me, but I would never forget, she just gave me a wink that I am familiar with the discussion that is happening. Again, it was like, you know, war was being prevented by the talk between OPEC and the IEA. But again, being a dreamer does not deny you the fact that you have to have others to be a dreamers, to bring about different realities to where energy debate should be. And I think over the Gulf War and what came after it, people realized that in attending to energy, there is no one-side solution. The producer alone cannot bring the solution, and the consumers alone cannot bring the solutions. And therefore, it is a must that we create a platform that enables people to talk to each other for the very purpose, which is to bring about stability to energy market and sustainability to world economy. If we can't serve these two purposes properly, we will all be failing. So people had to make the choice, come to terms with the reality of the choice that consumers should continue dialoguing with each other, or meet the consequences of being alone in an isolated environment. Each thinks that as long as I'm protected and my energy requirements are met, and I've got my own solutions, that's a choice. But it has been proven that it's been a wrong choice. And there is nothing more to showcase it than 22. When people thought that the status quo is here to stay, but actually there were even further aspirations for it to continue, and when people were thinking that the reality of the future will be different, turned out that there was a revisitation of the old tools, such as burning more coal, becoming more reliant on gas, and what have you. And when these realities come through, people tend to take the most available choice. And the most available choices had to put people on a kind of a conundrum on what they say and how they can meet, first and foremost, the very issue of energy security. Now we are more invited, actually, and we still, as Saudi Arabia, still uphold what we believe in, and that's why we spent years putting together the IEF. The IEF did not come in as a simple effort. No, it took us seriously ever since 2008, when we had to deal with two different energy situations. Up to the June 2008, we had higher prices and people were looking for solutions to how to bring market to a calming situation. Again, it was in Jeddah that we have made that meeting. It was not Paris, it was not London, it was not Washington. It was in Jeddah, in Saudi Arabia, where we have gathered 70 different countries, 15 different international organizations, 30 international oil companies and national oil companies, to bring about solutions to what can we do to mitigate that situation. Oddly enough, in the very same year, in December, another meeting, which was supposed to be a follow-up for that June meeting, was held in London. But instead of discussing what we have done to bring calmness to the market, we actually discussed something completely different, which is what happened to oil market, why it is as low as it was, because the prices then were bordering $35 from 140, and what could be the consequences of that and how it may impact energy security in the future if no solution was brought to it. So this is the kind of reality check that people need to be attending to. Be it as it may, that was the propeller of creating the IEF, and we went on until we decided to do so in one of those consumer-producer dialogue in Mexico, Acapulco, Mexico. I think it was 2010, if my memory helps. And we spent a full year putting together the charter for the IEF, and it was like pulling teeth, because again, there is, let's be too clear about it, there is the old school and the new school. There are those who came with their own old package and old vendetta, and there are those who were looking at the future and focusing on the future and only the future. And because of that, we're here. This meeting was a product of an attached document which we negotiated over a period of a month or two, whereby we created this program between the IEF, the IEA, and OPEC. And it has been here. It has been here because there is a value for it. And we need to have that dialogue. Now, it takes not two to tango, it takes three to tango, which is the IEA, OPEC, and the IEF. we value and continue to value the principle of dialoguing. But you can't dialogue with yourself. And certainly we cannot dialogue through the media. And obviously, if we have the platform here to validate and share opinion on when it comes to trajectories, so it's even wiser to be humble enough to say, I don't hold or uphold the truth, all the truth, but to be exposed to the potential of being wrong and to be corrected, or to benefit from the sources of data that others are bringing, and ensure that whatever we issue is simply more comprehensive and more accurate, because without data accuracy, we all will end up making wrong decisions. This is the thing that we need to avoid and prevent, as opposed to the thing that we need to compete with each other. Now, you realize now I don't read from anything in front of me, or I had memorized this thing. It just came as good or as bad as it may be, but luckily I have in this room quite a few of you whom I had the honor of knowing them for quite some time. And I think they can vouch on my behalf that I speak my mind. I don't care about the consequences, because again, being responsible make you, or should make it incumbent on you to speak up, especially if you're speaking up would lead to getting people to focus more on what we really need to do. Now, in our endeavor, and permit me again, not because I want to abuse being a host to this event, but I owe it to ourselves, this country, the very people that I work with, and I emphasize the word I work with, because trust me, I'm so proud that I have people that I'm so proud of working with. We also want to demonstrate for you that our responsibility exceeds the boundaries of energy security towards more what we really need to do collectively in attending to climate change. Because again, if people think that climate change is a luxury, I think they are really wrong. If people think that climate change problem is going to be economically cumbersome, but would not actually create a serious energy security issue if we don't attend to it properly, in both ways, in not overshooting ourselves to attend to this cause, yet compromising energy economics and maintaining our sight onto the energy trilemma that we need to attend to, or be too selfish that we focus on our own interests and to claim that we can be cocooned from the impact of climate change, I think is ridiculously wrong, and one can see the consequences as we see it today of not attending to climate change properly. But between the desire of maintaining our focus on climate change and maintaining our ability to achieve that while yet not compromising our economies, not only our economies, but the economies to evolve in the future. We still have billions of people that are devoid of any access of any type of clean cooking or energy access in general. I have a cynical mind, so bear with me. Even the numbers that are shared today on the clean cooking number, the 2.3, or the energy excess, the, I don't know, 600-700 million. I still want to see who did the head count to verify and validate those numbers. By any virtue of guesstimate, I fail to see that the number is correct. What we know also that the number will become higher as we go, because population growth is with us for some time, and especially in developing countries. Now, because of that, I want to, again, I'm burdening you, but bear with me. We have a presentation to show for you. First, we want to show you why we believe transitioning is virtue. In fact, we thought about it way before COP28. We claim actually the word transitioning is a word that we plugged in that declaration or the UAE declaration. I have to show you some pictures which I showed it to some of our friends in another event, and then I have a small number of participants from our team that will give you a quick, hopefully a quick run on why the French would use raison d'être, why it is a raison d'être for us to transition, but also equally why we are worried that others may not have the ability or the choices that we have, and therefore we're worried about how the global economy will transition and what would be the more scary parts if we don't collectively, and again I emphasize the word collectively, can succeed in transitioning. So bear with me. This is basically what we've been doing. Ever since 2019, we adopted the circular carbon economy, but also we also announced the green and green Saudi Green Initiative and the Middle East Initiative. Now, I cannot emphasize more than showing a picture. This is an event that was held on Thursday, the 12th of September 2019 in Abu Dhabi. And I will just draw your attention to the title. This is an event that I think the first time I met you, Halima was there. You interviewed me that day. And we had to showcase Saudi Arabia transitioning. This is another event that was held in PIF, the FII. And again, this is the time that we announced the circular carbon economy announcement we made that time. This is the World Petroleum Congress, and again, KSA Energy Transitioning. This is an event that was held in July in Jeddah during the Saudi US Summit and the US Arab Summit that took place in Jeddah, Jeddah. Again, we had a show for people to see us. This is during the COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh. This is in the World Congress in September. And this is the pre-COP MENA Climate Week, which some of you had attended. It's, a pavilion after pavilion after pavilion. This is the COP 2023. Now, you would remember that our pavilion in that wonderful building in Dubai was open before we even start negotiating. Here you go. Now, I will let our friends here, if you permit me, to take you through that trip, why we are transitioning, what ideas we have in transitioning, how we are going to achieve our transitioning, but more relevant and more important, how scary it is not to transition properly. So I guess who's going to start talking? Yeah, yes.
Yes, Your Royal Highness.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
I hope I'm not burdening you, but I want to make sure that we use this opportunity to make our voice clear and loud and clear. Go ahead.
Good morning, all.
Can you say your name? And
absolutely.
I know your parents and grandparents, but I want to make sure.
Faris Al-Wahabi from the Ministry of Energy. Your Royal Highness, Your Excellencies, esteemed guests, thank you for being here. Please allow me to take you through a view of our strategy. What we see here embodies our integrated energy strategy framework, in which our vision is preeminence in the global energy sector towards an innovative and sustainable future. Our mission is to lead the energy sector through the development of robust policies, efficient programs, achievable plans in the pursuit of sustainable growth, energy endowment, value maximization, leadership in new energy vectors towards the preservation of wealth for future generations. In this endeavor, we have set 6 strategic objectives: preeminence in energy markets, security of supply, emissions management, local content, efficiency and economic development, and fiscal optimization. The Kingdom is endowed and blessed with many resources, and these constitute our pillars: oil, gas, refining and petrochemicals, power, which covers renewables and nuclear, clean hydrogen and carbon. Of course, this strategy depends on many enablers, far too many to list here. But to give you an example, a major enabler would be carbon capture, utilization, and storage technologies. And also, most importantly, our people. That is the human development, the human capital development. To mention one more example, AI applications in energy and data. Now, this effort is led by the Ministry of Energy, but it is a prime example of collaborative, consensus-driven work with participation from many entities across the private and public sectors. This includes, for example, the Saudi Energy Efficiency Center, and from the private sector, Aramco, the Saudi Electricity Company, and this even extends to small and medium enterprises. Now, why adopt an integrated approach? The energy sector is a complex system, and it's highly dynamic. It offers an interplay between different supply resources with competing demands, and these supply technologies and resources also often complement or sometimes compete with each other. We need integration for the exact reason of this complexity. It's this highly interconnected, interchangeable, interdependent forces that call for this integrated mindset. And this is propagated by His Royal Highness, and in fact, I've worked in the ministry for 5 years. I've heard it ever since. This integrated mindset will enable the Kingdom to ensure energy security, affordability, and sustainability. It will ensure our transition. Now, covering all of that is the aspect of emissions, and it is so important to us. In fact, it's one of our strategic objectives. Now, for more on carbon and emissions management, I leave you with my colleague, Dr. Zaid Al-Gharib.
Thank you, Faris, and very good morning to you all. So, as His Royal Highness said, we are well on our pathway to net zero through the adoption of circular carbon economy, which we announced back in 2019, and we endorsed during the G20 when it happened here in Riyadh in 2020. So the circular carbon economy approach is a holistic approach that is pragmatic and holistic. It encapsulates an approach that close the loop on the emission. It starts with reducing emissions, and it's sequenced in such a way that it starts with the low-cost projects and projects that makes a financial and economical benefit to us. And we move through the pillars to reduce and recycle that CO2. So we create value out of that CO2. And the remaining CO2, we aim to remove it safely and reliably through projects that are either natural-based or technical-based, such as carbon capture and sequestration hub. So when it comes to reduction pillar, we are embarking on grand projects, such as liquid displacement, renewable energy production here for domestic consumption as well as for export. Also, all of our natural gas plants will be equipped with carbon capture technology, making them one of the attempts and the grand attempts to decarbonize one of the hard-to-abate sectors, the power sector. Also, we are making leaps and progress when it comes to energy efficiency, and of course, we are aiming to be one of the global producer and exporters of hydrogen as well. When it comes to using and recycling, we are looking and aiming to stimulate niche technologies that will reduce or reuse and recycle the CO2. So we make the CO2, instead of making it a cost center, we make it a profit center. And we have been really backing many technologies in that sense, such as carbon cure technology, which will be deployed in NEOM, in one of the grand projects, the line projects, where the CO2 will be used as a curing material for the concrete. In addition, that I'll be sharing with you shortly our plan to build one of the largest carbon capture and utilization projects. And of course, when it comes to carbon removal, we announced and we are already tendered one of the largest hubs for carbon capture and sequestration. So the Kingdom is making really a tangible progress in the energy transition. When it comes to energy efficiency, our energy efficiency program, which started back in 2012, resulted in a remarkable saving of nearly 500,000 barrels of oil equivalent per day. That is huge and remarkable. In addition, we are aiming to displace 1 million barrels of oil equivalent by 2030. So our energy mix will be 50% renewable and 50% from natural gas equipped with carbon capture technology. When it comes to CCS, we aim to build one of the largest hubs to capture and sequester 44 million tons by 2030, and we indeed started our first phase, capturing 9 million tons by 2027. And in fact, I wish our fathers and grandfathers were there to see this, because they had some disappointing moments when they discovered large sinks of saline aquifers that were not booked for hydrocarbon. So now these disappointing moments are becoming a moments of hope, because these sinks that they discovered back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s are being used to capture the CO2 and safely store it in the subsurface. In addition, as I said, we will be building one of the largest carbon capture utilization hubs. Today, we are capturing and utilizing 500,000 barrels of CO2 per day to produce glycol and urea, and we'll be expanding our capacity to produce further clean fuels, such as synthetic aviation fuel. And as I said, when it comes to renewable, you will see our efforts shortly in the subsequent slides. But I want to focus on what I do day in, day out, which is clean hydrogen. When it comes to clean hydrogen, we certified and shipped the largest ever quantity of clean ammonia. That is 150,000 tons to our customers in Japan, in Korea, in China, as well as in India and also in Europe. And we aim to expand that capacity if there are customers who are willing to actually offtake that volume. When it comes to hydrogen, we are constructing one of the largest green hydrogen projects in NEOM. And although hydrogen is a nascent industry, we are bidding on it, and we closed that project with $8.4 billion of investment. That projects have been off-taken, so the entire volume that the project will be produced and have been off-taking for the next 30 years. And of course, we will continue our journey through Saudi Green Initiative, where we'll be planting 600 million trees by 2030, and we're going to scale up to achieve 10 billion trees. So in addition to our initiatives under the circular carbon economy, we continue and we remain to be a responsible hydrocarbon producer, as well as growing our renewable energy capacity. As a testimony of that, we are the second when it comes to methane intensity. We're also the second when it comes to carbon intensity, and starting this year and for the next several years, we'll be tendering 20 gigawatts of renewable starting this year. This graph in front of you shows the methane intensity ranking using satellite measurements that was conducted by CAPSARC using Cairo satellite emission. And it shows that the kingdom, when it comes to methane intensity, is 73% less than what was reported by the IEA, making the kingdom in the second place when it comes to carbon intensity. And of course, the kingdom is one of the founding when it comes to global methane pledge. When it comes to carbon footprint, this graph shows where the kingdom is when it comes to carbon footprint or carbon intensity. The kingdom is in the second place, just right behind Denmark. And you know that Denmark is only producing 150,000 barrels per day. So I would like, although I don't want to take you through a technical journey, I know this meeting is not a merely technical meeting, but this did not come yesterday or the day before. This is a result of several decades of investments in technology, investment in upstream technology, and also pushing the envelope when it comes to best-in-class reservoir management practices. So we have been investing in technology. All of our wells that we drill today are not vertical wells. They're horizontal, maximum reach contact wells, multi-branch wells. So we make sure that we lower our operation footprint and we lower our facilities as well. So this tells you how we take ownership of our fields, how we take ownership of the emission, and that's what takes us to being the second right after Denmark. In addition, of course, to our best-in-class reservoir management practices. Now, we invested heavily in technologies such as flare recovery. If you actually fly by all of our fields and plants, you will never see any flaring, which is a testimony of what we do. When it comes to renewable, as I said, we'll be tendering 20 gigawatts every year starting this year, and that makes us in the third place right after China and the US. As of today, we have over 23.7 gigawatts of renewable capacity at different stages of development, out of which nearly 3 gigawatts are already operational. And now allow me to shift to my colleague, Maria, who will share with you our efforts when it comes to domestic market mechanism. Thank you.
Thank you, Zed. And thank you, Your Royal Highness, Your Highnesses, Excellencies, and esteemed guests. As my previous colleagues have shown you, there are many efforts that are being undertaken by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And one of the things that we have implemented to help enable all of the efforts that are being done in Kingdom is the implementation of a domestic market mechanism, the GAG crediting and offsetting mechanism. This mechanism is currently in its pilot phase, and it is a mechanism that is designed to be robust, holistic, transparent, inclusive of all sectors and all metrics, aligned with Paris Agreement Article 6. It ensures project-level accounting, and it aims to help us in the achievement of our NDCs, paving the pathway to our net zero by mobilizing finance towards projects that achieve emission reduction or removal, and increasing cooperation among the entities in the kingdom who have emission reduction targets. And of those, there are many. Now, looking both at our domestic efforts and also at international agreements, I would like to revisit paragraph 28 of the COP28 GST decision, where we have a menu of options. And here I'd like to remind of the slides that were shared by His Royal Highness, where we see the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia repeatedly using the word transition for years before this decision came out. And then to look at all of the 8 options in this paragraph and to recognize that, in fact, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is implementing every single one in accordance with its national circumstances, pathways, and approaches. And it is contributing to all of these global efforts, including the transitioning way before this paragraph was ever agreed at COP28, is really quite remarkable. And when we look at Paris Agreement itself, which was agreed in 2015, often what we read in the media or the rhetoric that we find is that the Paris Agreement is not working. But in fact, what we would argue is that the world has made tremendous progress towards climate change mitigation and adaptation since Paris Agreement was set in motion in 2015. In 2023, clean energy investments surpassed $1.8 trillion, and the Loss and Damage Fund was established. And here I would say, in a historic moment where a decision was gavelled on the first day of COP rather than the last days of COP. Global renewable capacity additions increased from approximately 150 gigawatts in 2015 to nearly 510 gigawatts in 2023. This is the fastest growth rate in the past 2 decades, and that is primarily because of the existence of an agreement such as Paris. Since 2015 also, more than 300 million people have gained access to electricity, and over 700 million have gained access to clean cooking fuels, with more to come, hopefully. As we've mentioned, COP28 came to a historic agreement for deep, rapid, and sustained reductions in GHG emissions in a nationally determined manner through the 8 global efforts in paragraph 28. And thanks to the collective progress on climate action, the worst-case scenario for temperature rise of 4 degrees has been avoided. However, there is still much work ahead of us to ensure that 1.5 is maintained and to ensure that our overshoot is actually aligned with the science. And for us in Saudi Arabia, we are doing our part. And if you'll allow Your Royal Highness, I'm going to quote you here and say, catch us if you can. Allow me now to give the floor to my colleague, Munif.
Just a small footnote. Munif is the son of Dr. Majd Munif, who has been a partner with me ever since I walked into that ministry. So we have a reincarnation type of arrangement.
My father is an oil man, and I am a renewables man. Sometimes people ask me, does he still invite you to lunch or dinner? So far he has, and I hope it continues. Thank you, Maria. As Maria just said, we have, achieving a global energy transition requires overcoming major challenges, starting with upscaling the deployment at an unprecedented rate, mobilizing more investments and financing than ever before, and doing this in a just and equitable manner. And as His Royal Highness said earlier, there is a set of diverse challenges that we need to overcome, and if you allow me to walk you through some of them. So the energy transition will require annual investments of nearly $6 trillion. This amounts to almost 7.5% of the world's GDP. Financial systems must evolve as well, and gaps in transition financing represent a major barrier to developing nations. If we look at renewables, even though they've grown at a record rate, more effort is required to triple renewable capacity in less than a decade. This requires an investment of at least $8 trillion and more than $3 trillion for grid expansion alone. Replacing fossil fuels in the global electricity mix requires more solar PV than the entire existing generation capacity. This requires at least $4 trillion of storage alone due to intermittency challenges, and lands larger than almost Greece. If we look at electric vehicle penetration, EV sales must increase by at least 6 times by 2030 in order to be in line with the goals of the Paris Agreement. Manufacturing capacity must become as large as the global manufacturing capacity for ICE vehicles within the next 5 years. While $100 billion has been invested in charging infrastructure, at least $400 billion will be required by 2030 for charging infrastructure as well. If we look at the nuclear challenge, it took 70 years to build 370 gigawatts of nuclear capacity, and the world must double that, or build double that in half that time. This requires at least $1.5 trillion in investments by 2050, while addressing regulatory framework challenges as well as social acceptance challenges. If we look at hard-to-abate industries and decarbonizing these hard-to-abate industries, they will lead to substantial increase in the cost of commodities. Decarbonization efforts can increase the cost of green steel by up to 40% and green cement by up to 115%. This higher cost of construction materials will disproportionately impact developing nations, and this needs to be addressed as well. And then comes the critical minerals challenge. Securing access to critical minerals needed in the energy transition requires addressing significant dependency risk. Extraction rates must accelerate to meet the 2050 demand for extracting critical minerals. Overcoming challenges of mining and extraction, which requires many years to develop. These extraction and processing activities have a high level of market concentration, as you can see in the graph. There is a risk of dependency on critical minerals, which poses major challenges to the energy transition. Eliminating energy poverty is pivotal for a just and equitable transition. The energy transition will not be successful if we do not eliminate energy poverty. As of today, 675 million people do not have access to electricity, 2.3 billion people don't have access to clean cooking solutions, and 86% of the global population will be living in developing nations by 2050. These are the people that will be most exposed to the risks for failing in the energy transition, to achieve the energy transition. And finally, allow me to conclude, building a new energy system requires collective and equitable efforts. The full spectrum of options in the energy toolkit needs to be utilized for a sustainable and impactful transition. Effective capital allocation and financing is imperative for a just and equitable transition, while taking into account every nation's circumstances. Addressing the vulnerable and most exposed nations is crucial so that no one is left behind in this energy transition. Your Royal Highness, Your Excellencies, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your kind attention.
There is no more further for me to add except on behalf of the team that is those who are in the energy ecosystem in Saudi Arabia and those who are collaborating with us. We just want to say one word: we rest our case. Thank you.